At 03 am on the outskirts of Kherson, the Chinese convoy moved into a fortified logistics depot near the Dnipro River. More than 50 trucks carried over 4.5 million pounds of ammunition, rockets, and fuel. L-09 infantry fighting vehicles, HQ-17 air defense systems, and Type 95 self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Lights revealed the scale of the operation as vehicles reversed toward underground storage. Ukrainian surveillance drones tracked every movement from above. Kiev. Commanders understood the stakes immediately. This was not routine resupply for isolated units. Major flow of equipment, carefully shielded, aimed at sustaining a corps-level offensive in the south. This wasn't routine logistics. It was a southern spearhead meant to tilt the entire... And then the silence broke. 03:26 a.m. The first Ukrainian move unfolded above Kherson. 6 Bayraktar TB2 reconnaissance drones entered the airspace from the west, cruising at 9,800 feet. Their thermal optics mapped every truck, escort vehicle, and each radar antenna. Minutes later, 2 aging Tu-143 Strige reconnaissance jets screamed in at low altitude, deliberately broadcasting a radar signature similar to strike aircraft. The Chinese air defense network reacted instantly. Operators of the HQ-17 surface-to-air missile system locked on and 317 type missiles, valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars. At the same time, Type 95 anti-aircraft guns swept the sky with tracer fire. Yet all targets were decoys. No bombers, no cruise missiles, only expendable drones. By the time the launchers reloaded, operators had mapped the exact location of every radar and missile battery. The deception worked perfectly. Before continuing, let me ask you a question. Comment number 1 if you think Ukraine joining NATO is correct. Comment number 2 if you think it is wrong. Ukraine allowed NATO and the United States to establish military bases that threaten Russia's security. Now, while you think about that, battlefield itself was about to erupt. The depot did not last long. At 03:32 a.m., while Chinese operators were still scanning the skies for phantom bombers, the real strike began from below radar level. A swarm of Ukrainian FPV drones, each no larger than a toolbox, skimmed the treetops at under 120 feet. Their terrain following navigation kept them invisible to active radar. The first drone locked onto the rear fuel truck carrying more than 90,000 pounds of diesel, directly into the tanker. A shaped charge ignited the load, producing a fireball that rose nearly 250 feet and lit the depot like daylight. A blast wave knocked over parked trucks and cracked nearby windows. Seconds later, drones struck an ammunition transport loaded with a 152mm artillery shells. The detonation triggered a chain of secondary explosions. Each shell cooked off in rapid sequence, sending lethal fragments across the depot. Flames spread fast, fuel leaking from ruptured containers. These escort crews attempted to with heavy machine guns, but the drones moved too fast and too low. Ground reconnaissance robots designated as crawled from concealed trenches. Their thermal sensors identified machine gun nests and a mobile radar truck hidden near the tree line. Coordinates were sent back instantly to Ukrainian artillery units waiting for fire missions. The deception had forced China to waste expensive missiles on empty skies. Struck the heart of their logistics. At 03:39 a.m., as flames and secondary blasts shook the depot, another phase of the operation unfolded from above. Each robot about the size of a backpack, down under micro-parachutes and landed softly in the tall grass less than 300 yards from the Chinese tank yard. Equipped with 6-wheel mobility and infrared navigation, the machines immediately began crawling toward their targets. The Chinese armored column parked near the depot consisted of Type 99A main battle tanks. Each tank weighed more than 55 tons, with frontal armor exceeding 700 millimeters of composite steel. Against a missile, They were formidable. Against the mongoose, they were vulnerable. The robots approached silently, their low acoustic signature drowned out by the ongoing explosions in the background. One by one, the units latched magnetized arms onto the chassis underneath the tanks. Each carried a directional-shaped charge designed to penetrate engine compartments. The explosives were pre-programmed to detonate only when the engines ignited. By 03:46 a.m., more than 8 tanks had been seeded with these hidden devices. Crews remained unaware. Busy depot, the trap was complete. Any attempt to start the engine trigger blasts capable of breaking through steel plates and disabling multi-million-dollar assets instantly. The Mongoose units then switched to standby mode, transmitting confirmation signals back to Ukraine. The battlefield had just been wired with silent killers. At 03:52 a.m., while the depot burned and Chinese crews scrambled to secure perimeter defenses, another strike group was already moving into position, crossing a dry irrigation canal 2 miles southwest of the depot, equipped with sound-dampening exhaust systems and improvised suppressors, reducing engine noise to barely more than a hum. Night vision goggles gave the operators full visibility in the pitch. Weapon prepared. Every step was rehearsed. The team reached the outer line of Chinese guard posts. Each post was manned by 2 soldiers equipped with QBZ-95 rifles and stationed in sandbag positions. The Ukrainians dismounted silently. 2 operators carrying suppressed MP5SD submachine guns approached the first post. 3 short bursts at less than 30 yards neutralized both guards before either could raise an alarm. Bodies were pulled aside, radios switched off, and the position cleared. The second element of the team moved toward a small stacks of diesel drums were piled 2 stories high, nearly 40,000 gallons stored in rows. Using magnetic clamps, the operators placed thermobarics underneath the stacks. Each device was set with a timed trigger, designed to detonate once the main assault breached the depot, while the last 2 operators moved along the fence line, cutting through barbed wire with insulated shears. Advanced toward a communication relay truck parked beside a container yard. A shaped charge was fixed to the vehicle's transmission section, ensuring its destruction once triggered. The infiltrators had cleared 3 guard posts, rigged the fuel yard with thermobaric explosives, and compromised a command vehicle. The Chinese perimeter was collapsing from within, but no alarms had been raised. The chaos of drone strikes and burning fuel concealed their movements. Human precision now joined with robotic sabotage to form a synchronized assault. Every part of the battlefield was being set up for a controlled detonation. The trap was nearly ready. At 04:12 a.m., Spearhead advanced from a tree line southwest of the depot. 2 A6 main battle tanks, each armed with a 120mm smoothbore gun capable of firing at over 5,000 feet per second. Bradley M2A2 infantry fighting vehicles moved in staggered formation, carrying dismounted troops prepared for close assault. Overhead, RQ-20 Puma reconnaissance drones orbited at 2,000 feet. Streaming live thermal imagery, these are 155mm self-propelled howitzers located 12 kilometers west. The artillery opened fire. Each shell landed with calculated precision on Chinese mortar pits, Type 95 anti-aircraft gun positions, and exposed HQ-17 launchers. The suppressive barrage cleared a corridor. The first Leopard crested a shallow ridge into a sander housing a heavy machine gun team. Impact shattered the position, throwing debris across the trench. Bradleys followed close, their 25mm cannons raking through defensive lines. Chinese infantry attempted behind ZBL-0s, RPG-7 rockets. Most shots either missed or struck the Leopard's composite armor with no effect. 4:18 a.m., Ukrainian armor was within 1,000 feet of the depot's southern gate. The coordinate armor and drone reconnaissance had broken open the perimeter and was now on Ukraine's side. At 04:22 a.m., Ukraine activated the next layer of the assault. two MiG-29 fighter jets across the depot's airspace at 20,000 feet, broadcasting encrypted signals that mimicked crew targeting links. Chinese radar crews immediately locked on, convinced a major strike was inbound. HQ-7 and electronic warfare units deployed the JY-300 system, flooding the spectrum with jamming at 5.8 gigahertz. That was the trigger Ukraine had been waiting for. The electronic chaos blinded Chinese operators to what was happening at treetop level. From the west, found at less than 100 feet. Its camera linked through a fiber optic relay station farmhouse 1.2 miles away. Unlike radio waves, the signal could not be jammed. The Ram-2's mission was clear: penetrate the depot's northern perimeter and destroy the mobile command vehicle coordinating defenses, while the Chinese focused up. Real threat slipped in from below, shielded by the very interference they had unleashed. The electronic warfare trap had sprung, and Ukraine held at 04:29 a.m. The Ram-2 loitering munition made its final dive. It struck the Chinese command vehicle parked near the depot's northern wall. A shaped charge detonated, tearing through steel and igniting the electronics inside. It spread into the underground storage entrance just behind it. Within seconds, stacked PHL-03 rockets and artillery cooked off, producing a chain reaction. Fireballs leapt hundreds of feet into the night sky. Shockwaves rolled across Kherson's outskirts. A secondary strike followed as a second drone hit the communication tower on the east side, collapsing the last link of command and control. By 04:35 a.m., the depot was no longer a logistics hub. It was a crater filled with fire and twisted metal. Ukraine had cut the artery clean. The depot was gone. The Chinese supply chain in the south lay crippled, yet amid the burning wreckage, Ukrainian soldiers pulled two wounded Chinese crewmen from a damaged vehicle and stabilized them until medics arrived. The battlefield victory carried a deeper message. Precision strike defined the operation. It was proof that technology could disable an enemy without abandoning. Over Kherson was not only the end of a depot, but also a signal even in war. Restraint and discipline can open a path toward peace. If you enjoyed our video, please leave a like and subscribe. Once again, thank you, and we'll see you.
June 24th, 2025. In the Black Sea, a sudden strike unfolded. It marked an unprecedented when Ukraine employed a three-layer UAV attack strategy to destroy an entire Russian coastal defense network, tens of millions of USD in just 5 minutes. At exactly 4 a.m. on June 24th, Ukraine launched one of its most sophisticated drone operations in Crimea in 2025. The objective was to simultaneously strike two key components of Russia's coastal combat system in Crimea: two Serna-class landing craft, tasked with transporting special forces and weapons from base to the front line; a Tor M2 system, responsible for detecting and intercepting UAVs, helicopters, and cruise missiles at close range. 3 weeks, special forces from Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate had been silently tracking every movement along the eastern Crimean coastline, particularly the Kherson shoreline. Satellite imagery, reconnaissance drones, analysis of enemy radar data all pointed to one conclusion. The M2 air defense system was acting as a critical link in protecting the amphibious corridor near Sevastopol. Like the S-400 or Buk, which are designed for high altitude and long-range interceptions, the Tor M2 specializes in low-altitude, ultra-short-range defense. Therefore, if Ukraine wanted to execute a precision UAV strike on a strategic target, the Tor M2 had to be eliminated first. The challenge was not just to hit the Tor M2, but to do so without being detected. According to HUR analysis, the Tor battery was positioned on an elevated point along the Kherson coast, less than 0.9 miles from the shore, giving it full coverage of the approach corridor from the Black Sea into the Khersonin area, enabling Russian units to intercept from offshore. For M2 radar to combat readiness, the crew required at least 2 minutes to erect the radar antenna, 3 minutes to power up systems, nearly 10 minutes to synchronize with the regional command post. During that window, the system was effectively blind to any threat. At 4:10 a.m., as the Tor M2 radar mast was being raised on a sandy stretch about 0.75 miles from the shoreline, not yet capable of combat engagement. Overhead, at an altitude of 1,640 feet, a small Ukrainian reconnaissance drone, deployed earlier for continuous surveillance of the area, recorded radar emissions that had not yet locked onto any target. Instead of risking a direct approach by an armed UAV toward the Tor M2, initiated a 2-layer attack tactic, a decoy UAV to draw the enemy radar's attention in the wrong direction, loitering munition to approach from outside the scan arc and exploit the system's technical blind spot. From an improvised coastal launch site in Ukraine-controlled Kherson province, roughly 7.5 miles in a straight line from the target, primary crew executed a simultaneous launch of 2 UAVs. After leaving the rails, both UAVs cut all active emissions and switched to encrypted GPS-aided inertial navigation, maintaining course without revealing any remote control signal, using sea-wave clutter and coastal sand dune terrain masking to remain hidden. Formation split point, decoy UAV-1 climbed to an altitude of 130 to 160 feet, activating a radar reflector to making it appear on radar as a much larger, heavy-class loitering munition. At a speed of roughly 75 miles per hour, it charged directly into the primary scan arc of the Tor M2. This created a completely blind corridor on the opposite side. Exploiting that gap, UAV-2, the loitering munition, approached from the right flank. It carried an 18-pound EFP warhead optimized to pierce the radar cabin without dispersing penetration force. UAV-2 closed in and struck the radar module and power system head-on. The precise detonation blew apart the entire control circuit assembly, severed the power feed lines, collapsed the partially raised 3D antenna mast. Debris scattered more than 164 feet away. From the moment the radar was detected in a non-locking state, the Tor M2 was knocked out of action. Western Crimean coastal low-altitude air defense sector was now completely blind. At the Khersonin post, Russian forces, reliant on the Tor M2 as their only low-altitude early warning, had lost the ability to monitor that altitude band. This was the ideal moment to initiate Phase 2. 2 Russian Serna-class landing craft were quietly slicing through the waves, with about 60 naval infantry aboard. On the bridge of the Kerna, the navigation radar screens showed only sea clutter, no trace of any approaching object, and the fatal mistake began with that silence. The Tor M2, the only low-altitude eye in the area, had been destroyed less than 5 minutes earlier, with no system in place to replace it. The Kerna is a Russian-built high-speed landing craft, 82 feet in length, with an aluminum-steel alloy hull. Its onboard electronics are minimal: short-range navigation radar, satellite communications, and no vessels were part of the same military transport group, having departed from an improvised pier at Cape Phelant. Land troops along the Khersonin coastline, where Russia was rebuilding a recently recaptured coastal artillery position. As Serna No. 1 was about 1.2 nautical miles from shore, Ukraine launched 3 small unmanned surface vessels, USVs, from a covert base. Each carried an 18 to 22-pound EFP warhead with a delayed fuse designed to penetrate before detonating. 1 locked onto Serna No. 1. USV-2 targeted Serna No. 2. USV-3 trailed at 1,640 foot as a reserve unit. At 4:14 minutes and 49 seconds a.m., just 4 seconds after entering direct engagement range, V climbed at an oblique angle from below, its nose slamming into the port side of the vessel, directly amidships. The shockwave and high-velocity shrapnel tore through the fuel lines, igniting a spreading fire within seconds. The blast completely destroyed the midsection, where troop seating, auxiliary fuel tanks, and carried equipment were located. Overpressure inside the sealed compartment collapsed the ceiling, blew off the aft doors, and triggered a reverse suction effect. The vessel began listing to port before slowly sinking. At 4:15 minutes and 30 seconds a.m., within 41 seconds, the entire hull slipped beneath the surface, while others went down with the compartment. Exactly 10 seconds after the first explosion, the second USV locked onto the remaining vessel. Serna No. 2 was moving about 656 feet from the first Serna. Upon detecting the blast, it immediately altered course 15 degrees. It was already in the USV's firing lane. USV-2 did not use a directional penetration warhead. Instead, it carried a fragmentation warhead with a contact fuse. Objective, the command cabin, where navigation systems, communications, and short-range radar were concentrated. At 4 hours 15 minutes and 52 seconds a.m., USV-2 slammed into the forward port side of Serna No. 2. Directly beneath the cockpit's bullet-resistant windows. The blast produced a dual penetration effect. Fragments punched through the 0.31-inch steel wall, flooding the sealed bridge with lethal force. Flames erupted, engulfing the control panels. Navigation system, radar, and all electronic controls were destroyed within seconds. The vessel did not sink, but the entire bridge crew was forced to cut throttle and abandon navigation. The drive shaft stopped turning. The ship drifted helplessly on the waves, awaiting rescue. The third USV, pre-programmed as the kill shot, no longer needed to be deployed. Combat scenario concluded in just 3 minutes. The total strike time was under 5 minutes, during which Ukraine severed Russia's entire amphibious landing corridor at Kherson. It had been established by Russia as a forward assault staging complex, with rapid troop landing beaches, shortcut routes to the Black Sea, and deployment points for coastal artillery and medium-range rocket launchers.